Good evening, everybody. This is Paul Gambaccini on BBC Radio 2 with a Sold on Song special with George Michael. He's recorded 3 special numbers for us. We're in Air Studios in London, Hampstead, to be precise, in North London, not far from the turf George grew up in and wrote about in his song Round Here. Round Here by George Michael, beginning this very special edition of Sold on Song on BBC Radio 2. I'm Paul Gambaccini, and he on the other mic is George Michael. Hello, George.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine, thank you very much. That song, as I say, from the Patience album, and it's one of my favorites from the album, both, I guess, for the lyrical quality and for the musical quality. So let's ask you first, which part came first?
I think it was the backing track. These days, the lyric comes last. They used to come hand in hand. When I was a kid, when I was like 18, 19, 20. The melody and the lyric used to come hand in hand, and because I was really just going for hooks and the absolute kind of going for the jugular, I tended to only keep the stuff that I had already made up in my head, because I felt like if I didn't remember it, it wouldn't be a hit. Whereas I understand with the passage of time that you can forget some of your best ideas because they don't necessarily, clump you over the head. I put the backing track down before I wrote the song. A lot of the stuff that I do, simply by virtue of the fact that I'm such a crap musician in terms of, doing anything technical, a lot of what I do is very simple because it's based on a backing track, and it wasn't arrived at by a group of people who're sitting and jamming. It was me constructing, and so in order to make that work, there has to be something relatively hypnotic about the feel of the backing track. In other words, you have to have your feel almost immediately as 50% of the records, because you're not going to get that many musical flourishes. Most of the musical flourishes are going to be vocal.
2 songs from the album, Round Here and My Mother Had a Brother, both of which are very autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you say, this part of my life suits this track?
I think Round Here, I suppose I just thought that little riff, the little guitar riff, I thought had something kind of slightly poignant about it, and lent itself to nostalgia. What happens in general is I will focus in on various things that I see either in my life or on the television or whatever, and I suppose I have a kind of filing cabinet that doesn't actually get rifled through until I write. But then when I stand in a studio, when I've written the backing track, for instance, and what I do every single time is I just go round and round and round the backing track, and I just talk gibberish, literally gibberish. It's kind of musical gibberish and lyrical gibberish. I just go kind of stream of consciousness until something gets me. Like really, like Jesus to a Child, for instance. I think that's my favourite title of any of my records, and it just came out. It's the kind of thing that would not happen with anybody around. I send everybody out. I work the machine that records my vocals. I work it completely myself, do all my own drop-ins and everything, and send everybody out, because the things that I'm going to experiment with in a studio, my body goes all over the place, literally. And my stream of consciousness gibberish is so embarrassing if you actually were to listen to any of it back. But within that, I'll start to grab melodies and lyrics, and I'll find that things that I've been thinking about in that period of time will kind of coagulate into some idea for a song. There's never a point where I sit down and think, right, what should this be about? Ever.
My Mother Had a Brother.
Mm-hmm.
It is so human, so true, and so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel it was brave to do?
Well, it was brave in a personal sense, to be honest, because I know, for instance, he hasn't said anything to me. I know my father's not very pleased about it. And I actually waited to write it. I could have written this years ago because I've known this story for a long time. But my mother's eldest sister, who was the only person I really thought would be hurt by me giving some of the family secrets away, as it were, she passed away early last year, and it didn't occur to me until I started writing the song that that's why I was writing the song now. But also it's very important to me because it's actually, in a strange way, it's about my mother's relationship with me, because I really truly believe that my mother probably sensed that I was gay. You know, mothers do, you know. I think my mother probably sensed that I was gay when I was very young. And even though I don't think there was an ounce of homophobia in my mother, her experience of, you know, homosexuality was the fact that she thought that her brother was gay and that it might have contributed largely to the reason he felt he didn't want to live in this world anymore. You've got to remember, this is 1950... The song is almost a way, the fact that the song talks about how much better things are for the gay community and for me as an individual now, it's almost a way of me telling my mum that I understand why she was scared. Because there were moments in my childhood where she was aware of something I wasn't, put it that way. I mean, I wasn't in a dress or anything, I don't think. But it's almost my way of saying I understand. You know, I understand that you went through with this with your brother, and that's why you would have been nervous of the possibility of me being gay as a child. You know, his death influenced my relationship with my mother, so it was very important to me, this song.
Here's where I know you've prepared a couple of songs for us, and the next song we're going to hear, which is a Joni Mitchell cover.
That's right. I'm a child of the 70s, and I believe that your lyrics should be as important to what you do and should be reflect kind of truth and beauty in a way that people totally presumed was necessary and would not disappear from music in say the 60s and 70s. The point I wanted to make with Joni Mitchell was that Joni Mitchell comes out of that 70s ideal, and the lyric is absolutely as important as anything else on the record. And Joni Mitchell's lyrics, I think, are they're just indescribably visual. If you really take the time to listen, you gradually form a room or a room full of people or a particular situation, and she paints every bit of it for you, which is something I don't do at all. It's not my style at all, but it's something that I see as integral to Joni Mitchell and is absolutely representative of the type of music that I grew up with.
Let's hear the song Edith and the Kingpin. This is Sold on Song, a special on BBC Radio 2. I'm Paul Gambaccini with George Michael, who has just done a exclusive cover version of Joni Mitchell's Edith and the Kingpin. Any particular reason for that one?
Just because it's my favourite, I think. The Hissing of Summer Lawns, it's an amazing album that is written pretty much exclusively about Los Angeles, I think. And I bought the album when I was living in Los Angeles. And there's some incredible lines, like we've all done it. We've all laid in bed at night at some point, not being able to sleep. And in hotels this is very much the case, but listening to the machinery of the building, because you can actually still hear whatever's going on in the building. And there's a line in it where she says, "The wires in the walls are humming some mysterious song." And I was like, wow, absolutely spot on, you know.
Yes. There's something that Joni is known for, which I think you do a little bit in that song, is you manage to make the voice shimmer.
Oh, do I?
Somehow. Well, if you wanted to be less complimentary, but I don't. But you might say it kind of wavers. You know, there's just a kind of on a very sunny day, the water would shimmer. Anyway, it struck me that you were compatible with that song.
Well, there's actually something that what I do with working within a note, and again, I don't think I ever understood this, but now I think I do, which is that, and probably totally perfectly representing who I am as a person, I think that masculine and feminine fight one another all the way through every vocal I do. And you'll hear, literally, I can within one word, the intent of the word is where I find that balance between masculine and feminine. If there's something is meant with aggression, it tends to be sung with a more masculine approach. But if the end of that line is saying something which I feel is a more sensitive thing, it will drift into something much more feminine. You know, I mean, I do naturally sound at times like a big girl. That's just how I sound on record. It's how I want to make the emotion known. It's almost like that old kind of soul thing where you can sing a woman into bed by sounding like a woman almost, you know.
It's like Marvin Gaye was told by Holland Dozier Holland, sing higher, the women love it.
It's true. Women find it very, very sensual. There are some things within pop music that you want to express. I mean, like, for God's sake, Last Christmas, my God, I sound like such a big girl. But it's almost because there was some part of me that almost thought of it as one of those old Spectre records, you know, and the actual sentiment of it is so weak when you think about it, of Last Christmas, that I think that's where that came from. And then there'll be something else which I don't think has any room for softness, and it will be sung in a different tone. But I think they're both me.
There's one way your writing could improve. That is, anyone's can improve.
What do you mean?
There is the way that one's writing can improve.
Not mine in particular, just
not
one's.
yours in particular, one's. That's in the lyrical sense, but the other is in an instrumental or production sense.
I've thought about the possibility of learning to play the piano properly, because I've always shied away from theory. Absolutely, intuitively shied away from theory. And I did study musical theory at school, but it's amazing. I just kind of threw it all out. In the strangest way, I swear to God, I could not tell you, and I still could not tell you, the strings on a guitar, what the notes are. I couldn't tell you so many basic things about the theory of music, because I had this real innate feeling that the more knowledge I had, the less fumbling around I would do. And the less fumbling around I did on a keyboard, the less likely I was to come up with anything really original. It's almost as though there are other writers that I've heard after I know they've engaged in learning theory, and it screws with it, because they know where they should go next. You know, they know where the chord should go. They know what the next cadence should be, or could be, or which way it's effective, you know, as opposed to just literally just plodding about on a keyboard very, very almost childishly and finding something that inspires you. I think maybe I'm a good enough writer now, and I feel confident enough as a writer that I think maybe now, at this point, theory would help me to explore other areas. But I'm still not absolutely sure.
Well, you've done a version of Praying for Time for us. I would gather the pianist is you.
You're joking, aren't you?
Oh.
I can't play the piano like that. No, that's my musical director.
Well, let's listen to it here on BBC Radio 2, the Sold On Song Special with George Michael, Praying for Time. There's a line in that song that I've always wondered about, because to me it has a double meaning, which is charity is a coat you wear twice a year. And either that
It's not the literal translation, it's the other one.
Right.
It's something that you cloak yourself with, make yourself feel good and warm with a couple of times a year. In other words, comic relief and children in need. You send them a $5. Ah, aren't I lovely? You know what I mean? And I don't believe in that. I know for a fact that there is less money going to charity, since charity is everywhere, than there was before it was everywhere. And of course, charity in this country has been everywhere since Live Aid, Band Aid. It was a well-established and already a cynical aspect of the music of the American business by that point, which is why you have, that fantastic juxtaposition of 35, 40 English musicians looking really rough, on a Sunday morning in Notting Hill, and then 6 months later you have We Are the World, which couldn't be more opposite, But yeah, charity to me is not something which should be done occasionally as a yearly event. I think charity is not necessarily even about money; it's about generosity.
This is Sold On Song Special with George Michael on BBC Radio 2. I am Paul Gambaccini, and we're about to hear a version of a song by the Isley Brothers. And you said to me off mic that you were surprised that more people haven't twigged
that the Isleys are such a big influence. Yeah, yes. It's everything that's there. It's that 50-50 pop and R&B, neither losing out to the other, which is a big part of what I try to do. And also the delivery, that soft vocal delivery, that man singing with an absolutely kind of warm, feminine lilt to it. And that was, you know, that was very influential for me. And like I said, I mean, I think Amazing sounds like the Isleys. I think there's an element of Fast Love that sounds like the Isleys, the way that the melodies are constructed, which is just because I loved them when I was a kid, and it was one of the first things I ever heard. One of my first ever memories was Summer Breeze by the Isleys, which I heard when I was in Cyprus and I was 7 years old. But yeah, I find it interesting that no one's ever noticed that, yeah, because I think it's fairly obvious.
Well, let's listen now, For the Love of You. Well, you mentioned what you mean to your own generation, and of course, Careless Whisper was chosen year after year as the best song ever. And was that a surprise to you, or did you say, yes, this is my best?
Well, I think I've always thought, God, a lot of people must cheat on their girlfriends, or vice versa, because, not that I don't know that anyway, but because I don't get why it's so massive. I know that it's a very well constructed pop song, and believe me, it was constructed very slowly. As a 17-year-old, I put it together bit by bit with Andrew. I've always thought it was a bit too cheesy to be as massively. It's, you know, I see it as cheesier than other people do, because people that I believe have to have quite sophisticated taste will say to me, God, Careless Whisper. And I just think, you know, do you know what I mean? You know, I'd much rather listen to Jesus to a Child or Different Corner, or I think even Last Christmas I'd rather listen to. I suppose it's knowing the absolute naivety from which it was written, but it obviously tapped into something very universal. I just don't get it, but whatever it is, I'm very, very thankful for it. You know, I mean, if people introduce me to their granny, or their great-granny maybe these days, but a relative that doesn't know who I am, or if a person is talking to their husband or wife and saying, you know, George Michael, you know, and then they're, oh! So I suppose it's great to have one of those, you know, it's great to have one of those. But it's a bit frightening to think that people's favourite thing that you ever did was written when you were 17. And yeah, it's great, I'm very proud of it. But like I said, it's just not one of my faves.
George Michael, Sold on Song, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.